But let's start at the beginning, because buildings are nothing more than walls. So that you can plunk down a building anywhere the economic incentives may work. But are you contributing to the revitalization of your host community? And that's where Dr. Song was so strong on this, was that, no, we're not just parking people in this building and building a parking deck across the street. We're not going to be an island unto ourselves. We're going to take that civic responsibility and be part of the fabric of the community. And we're going to go back and forth over these 2 days, especially today, talking to various leaders, not only about the economic development decisions that brought you to this town, but the human side. What are you doing now that you're here?
Thanks for coming, and I'm not going to say too much because I want to give the floor to our wonderful CEO, but I just want to say a few words about leadership. Susan Story is obviously an amazing leader. What makes her a good leader is her resume, which I'm sure you've all seen. Nuclear engineer, worked her way through the electric industry, came over to the water industry. Several years ago as our CFO here at American Water, was promoted to CEO a year later, and has been everything a leader could be. That's what makes her a good leader. What makes her a great leader is her passion, her enthusiasm, her commitment and drive for us to be the best company we can be, and the commitment she has to her people, to safety, to customers, to the safety of the water we provide. Everything about that makes her a great leader. But what makes her an exceptional leader in my mind is her heart. Her belief that our values lead us. We have our mission, we know what we're doing. It's not just what we do, it's how we do it.
Now, I want to welcome all of you here to our corporate headquarters. We really appreciate you being here. We're very excited about being here in Camden. What I want to do very informally over the next few minutes is talk a little bit about history and how history guides us to where we are today. Because we're all a product of where we've been, what we've done, those type of things. And if you think about it, cities and companies are the same way, because a company is just a collection of people. A city is a collection of people. And if you really want to understand a city or a company, just like people, you need to know where it came from, the experiences that it went through, because it's the experiences of the people. So let me talk just a minute about the history of Camden. Then I want to talk about the history of American Water, because it has a lot to do with why we're here today. What's important is that then you look at the visionary leaders who decided in the 1990s and the early 2000s, and then under Mayor Redd a few years ago here in Camden, that we're going to rebuild this city back to the greatness that it had for the centuries before. So the history of Camden, I think, is the history of America. It is the history of a city that grows, that's living, that now is in a place where it's coming back to the greatness that it's had in the past. And I think it's really important for all of us to understand what that history is as we're here, because again, we're defined by the history. So that's Camden and a little bit about Camden's history. When you look at American Water's history, we've been a company since 1886. We've been in the Kramer Hill area of Camden since 1893. So Camden's history is kind of interwoven with our history. We became, the predecessor for our company was actually in 1818 in Pennsylvania. And so when you look at the history of our company, to get us up to the modern day, we were headquartered in Pennsylvania for the early years from 1886. 1891, we moved headquarters to New Jersey. Early 1900s, our corporate headquarters were moved to New York City. Then in 1955, moved back to Pennsylvania and Philadelphia. And in 1976, the headquarters were moved to New Jersey. So we've had this Pennsylvania-New Jersey thing going, and the reason for that is to tell you just a little bit about American Water. We're the largest water and wastewater utility in the United States. We're on the S&P 500. We're about a $19 billion company. We're on the New York Stock Exchange. But we grew up buying small water systems throughout the whole country. Our two biggest states are Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And interestingly, those two states are about half of our business, even though we serve 14 million people in the country. and have regulated operations in 16 states and market-based in 45 states. But they're about even. About 25% of our business is New Jersey, 25 Pennsylvania.
I think it's forums like this where you can have some debates about ideas. And I know prior to us coming to the panel, some people were asking questions of Susan's story about the tax credits. So I think we should absolutely talk about those kind of at the end of the conversation, because I think that's part of the story, or as kind of the theme I'll say is kind of the story of Camden. I think tax credits are absolutely an important piece in the story of Camden, but there's many, many other factors that the two people to the right of me are going to talk about.
Perhaps more germane today is, why did we choose Camden? So first of all, our operations in Cherry Hill were spread between multiple buildings. We didn't have everybody under one roof. We had outgrown our primary headquarters space. And that, coupled with the fact that we have a lot of employees that are either at or near retirement age, we were concerned about sort of a drain when those folks retired, and the loss or the dilution of culture. So we were keenly focused on getting everybody under one roof, and so we had to expand the physical size of the building. Second, in terms of why we chose Camden, and I know this is something we'll talk a lot more about, but we've been in this region for 50 years, and quite frankly, we just wanted to stay. Camden offered us a well-rounded package in terms of a great site. The costs were something that we could digest. Our employees are in South Jersey, Southeast Pennsylvania, so we didn't want to deal with attrition again for the same reasons that I just mentioned earlier about why to move or why to relocate to begin with. And so Camden was, just sort of an all-around great package for us. So it's exciting for us at Subaru to be part of what we are quite sure is going to be a revitalization, an ongoing revitalization here in Camden. Even before we moved to Camden, we were investing heavily here. So at the core of our marketing efforts is what we call our Subaru Love Promise. And basically that defines our vision to show love and respect at every interaction people have with our company and with our brand. And hopefully I can live up to that here this morning. Love Promise has 5 pillars. Subaru loves pets, Subaru loves the earth, Subaru loves learning, Subaru loves to help, and Subaru loves to care.
So as we started looking into what we were going to do in terms of building a facility for our players that we could really focus on their health and wellness, we were looking around Philadelphia. Honestly, we had not looked in New Jersey and definitely had not looked in Camden. So we got far along in the process. The Navy Yard was one of the up-and-coming areas. We had moved our entire business operations into the Navy Yard, and there was land there. We had gone as far as drawings, and we were pretty much set in motion to go do that. As we were made aware of the tax credits, I think in first glance everyone was like, okay, great, it sounds good, but nah, we're not going to Camden. As it became more serious and we found out more about the program, and we thought, responsibly, we needed to take a look at it. I'll go back and say, with Josh and David, if you look at the investments, we have our parent company, which is Harris Blitzer Sports Entertainment. We're in Philadelphia, we're in Newark, New Jersey. We own and operate the Prudential Center, the New Jersey Devils, and we also have a team in Wilmington, Delaware. All areas that need revitalization and investment and improvement. And we run to those areas at the visionary leadership of Josh and David. So, that's something that's really important to us. So as we started looking at Camden, our players, we got to keep them safe, right? One of the things that was a stigma with Camden was it was not safe. So we were introduced to Police Chief Thompson and Mayor Dana Red, who was the mayor at the time, and we spent a lot of time with them. Understanding what the infrastructure was in place, how the changes had been made, and how they were going to support us and our players, quite frankly, because as you all can imagine, if something were to happen to one of them, very high and visible, if something happens to our players, it could ruin the whole city, right? That in terms of safety. And when we started talking to them, we got really comfortable with what they were doing and the visionary leadership of Police Chief Thompson and Mayor Dana Red, and the support that the city and Coopers Ferry, honestly, were going to provide us in coming here.
So our daily function essentially is to communicate with our legislative and executive leaders on all of the different policies that they're considering, and making sure that the business community's interests are represented. As you can imagine, that's really no small feat at this point in time. So we pay attention to a lot of what's happening both in the state, what's happening regionally, and obviously across the United States and globally, and also what's politically happening in the state. And I know you've had some entree into some of these discussions, I believe, but right now we do have a Democratic legislature, we have a Democratic governor, and so we are seeing some policies move through that have been a little bit challenging, or a lot challenging, to the business community. And what BIA has really been focused on is making sure that New Jersey is the place for folks to come and do business. Is when we're looking at some of the competitiveness factors, we have to keep in mind that the state is really facing some fiscal challenges. And so we feel it's our responsibility to make sure that our legislative leaders are aware of that. Why? Because as you go through LNJ, you're going to hear about the healthcare needs of the state, the education needs of the state, the transportation and infrastructure needs, and the list goes on. However, we have some structural deficit issues that are not addressed. There will not be funding to address those concerns and improve those areas of the state moving forward.
Let me ask you both to talk about another phenomenon that is at the heart of this competitiveness argument for those living in the state. You point, first of all, to the taxation structure and say more of that is being borne by your members, by the business community. What is often described in the business community in terms of what it's like to do business here, and it has to do both with attracting but also retaining, is the bottom line financial is only part of it. In the last several years, we've also seen the expansion of paid family leave, the expansion of that is about to occur in January of the minimum wage. Now, incrementally over several years, but that first tranche is quite significant. The regulatory environment in terms of sites and permitting not only with the state environmental protection, which is enough, but various layers, municipal. So there's a lot of monetized costs that aren't really seen in terms of that premium for doing business in New Jersey. Describe some of that in more detail, and how does that impact the overall competitiveness?
At least one of us makes the point it's not one proposal. It's the layering upon layering upon layering upon layering that creates the reputation that we have of being unfriendly to business. And it's tough because I think, generally speaking, you know, people like me, we're philosophically supportive of a $15 minimum wage. We're philosophically supportive of expansion of paid family leave. We're philosophically supportive of these concepts. But they are so, oftentimes here in New Jersey, our legislature has a little bit of a bad habit of legislating, not just very aggressively wanting to be the first in the nation of X, but also legislating to sometimes the bad actors, which, you know, brings on a lot of really tough legislation that is very anti-business because one business owner did something that's egregious and terrible, then the rest of the business community gets painted with a broad brush on a piece of legislation that is completely unfair characterization of how the 99.9% of businesses are run here in the state of New Jersey. So these are the kinds of things that we're consistently up against. And here in South Jersey, we are really, really in a bad place because we are bordered obviously by Delaware and Pennsylvania. Two much, especially Delaware, but Pennsylvania as well, much cheaper states to do business. Just for example, in Delaware, their minimum wage is going up to $9.25. And that's in October of this year. So $9.25 is going to be their max. And it is increasing. It's $8 and change now, and it's going up to $9.25. Whereas by October of this year, we'll be at $10, but then by January of this year, we'll be at $11 at our minimum wage. And then the next year, we're going to be at $12 plus because the CPI is attached to all of these things. So if you're a business located in Salem County or Cumberland County, it's very attractive to move over to the next state just for minimum wage, lower property taxes, all the things that Chrissy ticked off. Similarly in Pennsylvania, And I'm sure the last panel talked probably extensively about the tax incentive programs that were really made available and created under the Christie administration. You know, Pennsylvania has a very successful, aggressive program that's a tax incentive program that brought all these companies to the Philadelphia Naval Yard 5 minutes from here. And so we have to compete with those kinds of tax breaks and tax incentives that our neighboring states are offering as well, which is why you saw the creation of a GROW or an ERG or some of these programs that are implemented here in New Jersey. It's little things like that that can help us beat back these mandates upon mandates upon mandates that at the end of the day ends up being very costly for business.
The one legislation that comes to mind was enacted in 2002, and it was known as the Municipal Rehabilitation and Economic Recovery Act, known also as the Camden Bill. And part of that Camden Bill infused $175 million into the city of Camden to move forward Camden's new identity from its industrial past to what is now known as the EDS and MEDS. And we'll talk a little bit about how the EDS and MEDS, and primarily our higher education institutions, have helped to, again, rebuild and revitalize the city of Camden. But back then in 2002, the first, I would say, phase of EDS and MEDS started with the expansion of Rutgers, where they built out a law school. And then also you had Camden County College expand its presence in the city of Camden. And then Rowan University took over a former bank building, which is located at Broadway and Cooper Street. And now that represents their urban campus known as the Camden Academic Center. In addition to the EDS and MEDS, or the higher education institutions, our healthcare institutions also expanded their presence in the city of Camden. Cooper University Health, Our Lady of Lourdes, and also Virtua, and then CamCare built a new healthcare facility, and CamCare is our federally qualified healthcare provider, along with Project Hope. So that sort of was the first wave. The second wave, and Phoebe can correct me, came when Rutgers advanced a student housing project. And I'm not going to step on her lane, I'm going to let her talk about that. But also, we saw the Cooper Medical School of Rowan University open its doors in 2012, which was followed by MD Anderson, which again is a renowned cancer center here in this nation that chose to call Camden home. And now we are sort of evolving into the third phase. And that third phase includes the Rutgers School of Nursing, the Joint Health Sciences Center, which I'll talk about a little bit more, and then the future plan activity of the Rutgers Business School. So you can hear the different layers of what has happened since 2012, and here we are in 2019. So a lot has been invested in the city of Camden.
Rutgers is considered Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, which suggests there's one university. But the way that this university has grown, we are in effect not one, but 4 universities. And they include the Newark, part of Rutgers University, the Bio and Medical Health parts of Rutgers University, the Rutgers University New Brunswick that most of you know and many of you may love, and then the small nurturing Rutgers University Camden. And I'm very, very proud to be the leader of that small nurturing place, which is not so much small, but continues to be nurturing. So in fact, over the last 5 years, we've grown dramatically. We've grown by 5%. In terms of the sheer numbers, but that means we have moved from about 6,000 to about 7,500 students and faculty and staff. And we have been, as a consequence of legislation, part of the development around the campus, which includes the Joint Board and includes a number of different other buildings that are part of the growth of the college and the university that I call home. Our system is quite different here because by statute, again, we're one university. So that means we share a number of different identities across the state, but it means that we can carve out a niche in Camden that's a little different. We have one of two of the law schools. We have one of two of the business schools. We have one of two nursing schools, and then we have a arts and sciences college, which was the founding part of Rutgers University in Camden. The arts and sciences started in the early 1920s, and so it has a long history, and our history for Rutgers, New Brunswick is quite young, because Rutgers, New Brunswick was part of the revolutionary spirit of New Jersey. So I always wear my pen, because this pen is Rutgers University as a whole, the pen that says that we are from the revolutionary times, and we're part of the first 3 states that founded the nation, New Jersey. So who are our students? They are still, and were at the beginning, first generation students for the most part. And that means that they that we have an access focus, and in the 1920s on through the 1980s and 90s, that meant predominantly white first generation students. In the last 20 years or so, probably 15 to be candid, the population has changed, and we're really committed to access, which means our students are, many of them are Latino, and others are African American. Very, very diverse group of first generation white students. And we have, by using a creative scholarship program that is now under investigation and a study by the Federal Reserve Bank Board, on which I serve actually, to be replicated throughout the country. It's called Bridging the Gap, and basically what it is a last-in opportunity to have students come to Rutgers Camden because of the other scholarship support they can get because of their economic status. We are certainly an anchor institution, but we are more than an anchor. Because of our commitment to civic engagement, we work as faculty, as staff, and students with K through 12 students, and we work through Rutgers Future Scholars program to enable those students who do well, K through 12, to come to Rutgers without any additional expenses.
You know, the things that we've been focusing on over the last 10 years are really STEM education and workforce development, and also public awareness about research and development and STEM in the state. So we have a couple of programs that we have been supporting. One is an Edison Patent Awards program, where it gives our companies and our research organizations an opportunity to highlight the work of their researchers. And so that's an annual event where we take nominations every year. We have a research committee come together, review patents, and then we really present them at a ceremony in November normally. But we've also been focused really on STEM education and workforce development programming. So we have been involved in a Merit Scholar program at the community college level, where we support students who are excelling in STEM-related majors but just have financial need. And then we have developed a program in partnership with the Governor's Office, the DOE, the Secretary of Higher Education, where we called the Governor's STEM Scholars, and that's a program for students in grades 10 through PhD. And that's part of that program's focus is to support retention for students in STEM and our best and brightest. So somebody had brought up the issue before about brain drain and whether or not we're recruiting students coming in this state. The statistics are we're not recruiting enough students to meet the need in this state, nor are we retaining enough students. So that program is supposed to focus on that, and that's really I think a world-class introduction for students on what's going on in STEM in the state. You know, what does it look like to work in STEM in industry? What does it look like to be a professor or an administrator at a university? What does it look like to work at the Princeton Plasma Physics Laboratory? And so the students have been getting a good experience. We're in our 5th year in that program, and we got a lot of great feedback, and it's a good recruiting tool for some of our top universities. The most recent initiative that we took on happened over about 2 years ago. It's called the New Jersey STEM Pathways Network, and that's a program that is statewide that supports really the pipeline for STEM education and workforce development. So we have, over 500 representatives a part of that organization. We are convening people, talking about issues specifically related right now to computer science, early learning, teacher recruitment and training, and then sort of this vacuum of workforce development that we're really trying to figure out now.
And we are the state affiliate of the Biotechnology Innovation Organization in Washington, D.C. And we represent probably about 400 members of the life sciences ecosystem here in the state of New Jersey. And that's everybody from the big pharma companies, the traditional hub companies that we've had here for many, many years, like Johnson & Johnson and Merck. I think the most important part for our industry is if you look at the FDA and you look to see these last few years, where are the new and novel drug approvals coming from? 2017, literally half of the new drug approvals, the novel treatments that were approved by the FDA came from New Jersey companies. In 2018, the FDA approved 59 new novel treatments, and that's the record for them, and 20 of them were from right here in New Jersey. So like I said, we're very proud of our legacy here in the state, and very excited for the industry moving forward. So for us, from a policy perspective, really, for those of you who've been following the discussion in Trenton, there's been a lot of discussion about tax incentives and their impact here in the state of New Jersey. That's obviously very important to our members. I presume it's probably very important to many of your members as well. And for us as well, I think the other half of that is really making sure that policymakers, researchers, others really understand the impact that our industry is having here in the state, not just from the employment part, because that's important, but I think from also the value part, the patient value part. These cures that you hear about, whether it's for hepatitis C, oncology, gene therapy, immunotherapy, they're saving lives. They're creating greater quality of life for both the patient and the caregiver. And at the end of the day, we think they're also providing value for the health system.
In regards to the technologies associated with wind turbines and building those and putting them off the shores of Atlantic City. We are considering a U.S. headquarters. Ideally, it would be our headquarters location, R&D, potentially a training facility. Ideally, we'd be able to do some manufacturing here, so we can, we're on the river, it'd be great. We noticed that you don't have a port here. There is a port 30 miles south of here in Paulsboro, thereabouts. So there's a disconnect in that, but we do like the opportunity. I think that's here. We're probably talking in the neighborhood of 500 to 750 jobs, ranging from clerical staff at $35,000 up to some PhD folks in that industry of upwards of $200,000.
A company like yours, New Jersey will be on the forefront, and we will be a leader in wind generation. There's no question of that. We are on the East Coast. We're virtually the furthest site south between us and Maryland to build a facility like this and maintain its structure. Once you head south of the Carolinas, as you all know, hurricane increases the probability, therefore making it an off-site wind facility more dangerous. So we recognize that you have identified Jersey as the place where you want to be. We agree with you.
What you're looking at is presumably vacant and your state owned. It's currently not paying any taxes to you. We're paying some marginal amount. Sounds like many of the community's interests that the state obviously it's a cost to promote have to do with things that can be implemented locally. So as part of your overall incentives discussion, we have to have a very serious conversation about what type of property taxes are going to be generated. So if this property today is generating nothing for the city of Camden, and if you then move in and start paying $2 million a year to the city of Camden, it sounds like we could have some common ground with the community if we get the city on board with starting to use those tax dollars, which they don't currently have today, to start implementing things that government can do that the corporation cannot. things like lead abatement programs. So if we're going to talk incentives, we can't just look solely to state taxation. We have to look at what you're also providing property taxes. And if we're also negotiating with the city, or you're negotiating with the city, a pilot, we need to take that into account too.
I wish this conversation would have occurred at the front end of the legislation, because we recognize that our leverage as a community is limited if there's no ramifications for y'all not doing what we're asking you to do. So given that frame, we'd like accountability, we'd like a seat at the table, and we'd like direct ways for the state's wealth that many of the company and the Eds and Meds are benefiting from to enter into the pockets of Camden residents, foregoing a lot of middlemen.
We'd also like different programs so that the residents of Camden who may not work for you will understand finance. If you're going to come to contribute to our community, we need to have our own mom and pop stores, we need to have our own businesses. So for all the billions that we bring in, for all these years and all the products that you're bringing out and all the tax incentives that you are going to be getting, some of that money should come back and train some of our residents to run their own small businesses. So that people that you do bring into Camden that aren't from Camden will feel free and feel safe and feel comfortable living there, knowing that they can get what they need from our residents who have been there.
We have several requests we would like you to consider providing. We unfortunately are going through some tumultuous financial issues. We'd like you to provide towards our endowment so we can continue to provide full student aid as much as possible. In return for this, we are prepared, although we are a four-year institution, we are prepared to take our technical skills, especially, and bring down some staff from the engineering school at New Brunswick and create a specialized trade training program intended for helping people learn how to do the trade skills necessary for wind power. Well, so they can be wind certified too. Not to be confused with being a professor, which just means you bloviate and let out a lot of wind. So this training program would enable our local residents to learn skills that they don't already have, because there are a specialized series of skills needed to work to build these turbines, as well as to assemble them, as well as to install them and maintain them. And that's a very specialized set of skills, and we're prepared to provide you with that training program. We also would like you to commit to a preferential hiring for our graduates, if possible, for certain things. Obviously, they have to have relevant skills for that. And we would like to offer you a scholar in residence program so that differing executives and differing researchers can come and teach our students about what it is to be Wind Corporation.